Well, hello everyone. My name is Zachary O'Shea, and this is Box of Teeth. It's also just another Mimic Monday, so let me share a new Mimic with all of you right now. Every Just Another Mimic Monday, I reach deep into that box of teeth and produce a homebrew Mimic for all of you for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. They're usually horrific, sometimes a little bit silly, and this one leans pretty hard into the silly until you realize what it can do, and that is the Mimic Mimic. Your backpack suddenly developing teeth and tentacles was surprising to say the very least. You've been using it for months, and the idea of it being a Mimic is just unfathomable. The same could be said for the barbarian whose trusty axe is now bending backwards and attempting to gnash on his skull. The paladin's gear, though, seems completely unaffected, and he's bellowing to some fiend or something about it showing itself. Is that chandelier slowly dripping down to form some sort of horned, spongy humanoid shape? Oh, this is going to be a rough fight. Roll for initiative. A strange creature spat from the bowels of hell. The Mimic doesn't really have a proper demonic name. Hell, it doesn't really have a sense of identity beyond wanting to find itself onto the mortal plane and make malicious mischief. Essentially, it's a demon-shaped puddle. It can assume the form of any object and shares all the same traits that a Mimic has. In addition, it can also share the ability to become a Mimic with objects that it can see nearby. Perhaps this demon was formed from the mortal's sense of nameless dread, or because mortals cursed inanimate objects too often for not working properly or being in the way. Nevertheless, the Mimic is here now, and it's going to get messy. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at the Mimic statistics for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. The Mimic is a challenge rating 7 large fiend shape changer that is chaotic evil. It has a pretty low armor class for its challenge rating, but a lot of hit points to make up for that, along with some saving throw bonuses. It's got some skills, damage resistance to fire, but still has immunity to acid as well as poison, and is immune to the poisoned and prone condition. It knows Abyssal and Common. Like a Mimic, it has Shape Changer, Adhesive, False Appearance, and Grappler, except it doesn't have an amorphous form. It has like a spongy, horned, humanoid one instead. On top of that, it has Toxic Skin, so if a creature begins its turn grappled by the fiend, it takes 3d6 acid damage. The Mimic has multi-attack for a bite and a pseudopod attack, which are basically the same and do a little bit more damage than normal Mimics. Its big threat comes from Corrupt Object. So the fiend can spot an object within 60 feet that is non-magical and change it into a Mimic that serves the fiend, or the Mimic as it were. I'm saying Mimic a lot, I know. This Mimic acts just like a normal Mimic, is under the fiend's control. It turns back to that undamaged object after a minute if the fiend dies or if the Mimic is reduced to 0 hit points. If that object is carried or worn by a creature, that creature may make a DC 15 charisma save to avoid the effect from happening to that object. And in addition, the Mimic can only have 3 such objects that are Mimics at one time. It has one last reaction, which is Focus Death, which is pretty simple. If the fiend reduces a creature to 0 hit points, it can use Corrupt Object as a reaction. Alright, like I said, it sounds a little bit silly, but could definitely be very dangerous. It came about because I made a typo of typing Mimic twice, and I went, oh, what would a Mimic be? And here we go. I'd love to hear how you would use it in your own game. You can find all of my Mimics, there's hundreds of them, or hundreds more horror-themed monsters, all for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. They're all perfectly free at boxofteeth.blogspot.com. Speaking of free, you hear me go on and on all the time about my book, Greasepaint. It's a horror novel. It's the first in the Crimson Thread series. It's got a killer clown, and right now it is free because this is my birthday week until June 5th. So if you go over to Amazon.com, Greasepaint by Zachary O'Shea, or you can go to www.zacharyoshea.com, where I have this along with other horror-themed role-playing projects that I have that aren't Dungeons & Dragons, and pick up a free ebook copy. That'd be pretty cool. I'd love to hear what you also think about it as well, even though it's upside down now. All right, everybody, thank you for your time and your attention, and as always, have a great week ahead of you.